So the next we have, and thank you for being with us. And I know you have to leave, but you have a very important message to share with us. We have Professor of Sociology, Political Science, and Liberal Studies at the Graduate Center and of the University of New York, Julie C. Sulk, where she also serves as the Dean of the Master's Program. She is currently teaching at Yale Law School as a Florence Regatz visiting professor. She is a frequent commentator in the media on legal issues affecting women, including the Washington and LA Post, Democracy Now!, CBS, and many other outlets. So I'm going to open up the floor. Professor, you have our full attention.
So yes, I'm very sorry. I do need to get off the call at 2:30, but thank you very much for having me. If anyone is interested in learning more about the Equal Rights Amendment, I just published a book, We the Women, The Unstoppable Mothers of the Equal Rights Amendment. You can buy it on Amazon. You could buy it anywhere you buy books, and that'll give you most of the background information and plans for the future with regard to the ERA. So very quickly, I just want everyone to know that part of the reason your vote matters this year is that the Equal Rights Amendment was actually ratified by the 38th and last state needed to make the Equal Rights Amendment part of the Constitution. The ERA is a provision that is not currently in the Constitution that says that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. It's basically a gender equality amendment, and almost every constitution around the world drafted in the 20th century has one, and we do not. And it's not for lack of trying. Women have been trying to get an ERA into the Constitution for at least 100 years. They started the project after the 19th Amendment, when women's right to vote was ratified in 1920. So this project went on for a while, but it didn't really get off the ground until the 1970s, when Congress adopted it by 2/3 vote and sent it to the states for ratification. In the 1970s, we only got 35 states. And I want to point everyone who votes to Article 5 of the Constitution, which says that to get an amendment to the Constitution, you need 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of state legislatures. And that's why your vote matters, because it's very hard to imagine 2/3 of Congress agreeing to much of anything these days, even something so basic as a commitment to gender equality. But that's why it's taken so long. It's taken generations. And now, because it's taken generations, we're very close to adding it to the Constitution. But one of the things that happened in the 1970s was that powerful men in Congress insisted on putting a deadline on the ERA. And they did succeed in getting that deadline in. There were literally 10 women in the House and 1 woman in the Senate when the ERA was adopted by 2/3 of the vote. So at the time, when women made progress, they made progress by convincing the vast majority of their male colleagues to come along with the plan. But I do think that one of the consequences of the compromise was that you got this amendment in, an amendment that put the deadline on ratification. And of course, we didn't get all the states to come in by the deadline. Congress extended the deadline once in 1978, and then the new deadline was 1982, but the 3 states didn't come in by then either. There was an amazing revival movement led largely by women of color of all generations in the legislatures of Nevada, Illinois, and Virginia since 2017. So the last 3 ratifications came in just in the last 3 years. The Women's March played a huge role in galvanizing people. The Me Too movement was also a factor in getting people really focused on the need to constitutionalize gender equality. And in 2020, I think as we were celebrating the centennial of the women's right to vote, the attention was drawn to unfinished business. And the ERA is that unfinished business. And so now I think fundamentally, it's not just about how the law is going to change on issues like equal pay and pregnancy discrimination. It's about empowering women. And I think the fact that we don't have an ERA is just a sad reflection of the dangerous imbalance that we've had in Congress and in state legislatures for way too long. And we're at an all-time high right now in the Congress. That's 23% of women. 23.7% of Congress is women. And think back to the constitutional rule. Also, in state legislatures, we have exactly 1 state legislature, Nevada, where it's 51% women. That's to say all 49 state legislatures are majority men. Congress is supermajority men. And what that means is that if you want to amend the Constitution, you need 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of all the state legislatures Women don't even have enough seats right now in Congress to block a constitutional amendment, let alone to pass one. You need a third of Congress to block an amendment. And so the move for the ERA and the absence of the ERA is just a reflection of this imbalance of power. And I think making the ERA succeed is one way of trying to correct that imbalance. So the action item I want to leave you with is the House actually passed a resolution earlier this year to remove the deadline on ratification. So if they remove the deadline, they could add the ERA to the Constitution, but the Senate has held it up. There are 48 sponsors in the Senate. Mitch McConnell is personally not a fan of the Equal Rights Amendment, but there are many seats in the Senate that can be flipped. And I think that now, you may not necessarily live in one of these flippable Senate districts. You may already have candidates who are going to win in the districts where you live that already support the ERA. And this is where I want to say your vote is extremely important, but in a democracy, your vote is only the beginning. Your vote is not enough. So when you vote, you should also be telling the people you vote for why you're voting for them, and the people you're not voting for why you're not voting for them. And the constitutional guarantee of equal rights should be at the top of your list in what you say about who you're voting for and why. So I'm very sorry I have to end there. I would love to take questions. Please read my book and feel free to email me if you could get my email address from the organizers if you'd like to learn more about the Equal Rights Amendment.
Thank you so much, Professor. We have a few questions. We'll make sure to share with you and maybe possibly post them back on the group's page so we can get your answers.